creation and eventually wind down the division that was implementing the Abbott court decisions, it's clear that I'm not an educator, and I didn't know what to do. But fortunately, I had spent some time in Union City, and I had discovered that even though this is in Hudson County, even though this was a story that needed to be told, and I used Union City as the example for the other 30 Abbott districts. And thank God for Union City. I wouldn't have known what to do otherwise. But David and I are here tonight to talk about this very important book. It's very important in Union City, but this is a book that's important for the whole country. And in talking about it, I want to start with a pizza party. A pizza party that took place today, I think at Washington School, is that right?
Washington School.
So here we have this scholar author from Berkeley, California, who's come to Union City to throw a pizza party. And I'd like this scholar author to explain himself. David?
Well, I was lucky enough to get to spend a year here in Union City, and it's been really a transformative experience for me. And a lot of that time, I was in Washington School. I remember when I was told that I was going to be in Washington Elementary School and share that news with Fred Carrig, who's one of the architects of the transformation. He said to me, God, Union City must really be confident they're sending you to Washington School. You know, it's not one of the elite schools. It's kind of like an ordinary school. And I spent a lot of time in room 210, Alina Busbali's third grade classroom, with kids. And Alina, would you stand up and... And that's where I was Mr. David to that group of kids. And I'm sure it's a very, 8-year-olds are a very affectionate bunch of folks, and I'd walk in that room and I'd be mobbed so much that, you know, Alina and I would work at this little plan. Okay, table 1, you go mob Mr. David, and table 2, you go mob Mr. David. And so Pizza Party became a kind of tradition. And so today, you know, I was doing a public TV show, and I'm here tonight, but in a lot of ways, the best part of the day was the pizza party that I threw for those kids who are now 5th graders, and who I said, I'm going to stick around in your lives for a good while. So the story that I tell in the book starts there, and it works its way up the ladder. And it starts there because the very heart of what any good school system has to do is to connect talented teachers, engage students in a challenging curriculum. That's the nub, and everything else builds out from there. So that's why I was there, and it's where the emotional bond was formed. But as you know, I roam far and wide beyond that school, and had the pleasure of getting to write about it in this book.
So this is a very stubborn topic in American life. It's been something that is, why aren't we doing a better job educating kids from poor families when they go to school only with other kids from poor families? And we've been talking about this for a half century. There have been thousands of books written about it. There have been scores of commissions formed to analyze and report on it, and there have been, as Sandy mentioned, there have been lots of silver bullets proposed. And for teachers and principals in city school districts, it seems like there's a new fad every 18 months that comes from Washington or Trenton, and they say that this is the answer. In Improbable Scholars, the information seems to be the kind of indisputable work and practice and objectives that nobody could argue with. So why is it so hard? Why, first of all, why is it worth the book to point out things that seem like almost platitudes?
Well, I thought about calling the book Tortoise Beats Hare, because it's telling a story that hasn't been told in a long time. If you read the media or watch TV or, you know, check out the blogs on the web, it's all about crisis, it's all about problems, it's all about what isn't working. And it is about magic bullets. It's about let's shut these failing schools, let's get rid of these no-account teachers, let's bring in Teach for America folks, let's open up a whole lot of charter schools in the district. And that's the model, or the idea that's been propagated for the last decade plus under a Republican administration and a Democratic administration. It is just the latest in a series of silver bullets that people have offered up. The latest in the notion of you can just change the structure and everything else changes. But I think what Union City teaches is, or reminds better, is that there are a handful of time-tested, well-proven, well-established, game-changing strategies that a school district can adopt. And why, I'll say a word about that in a minute, but why write about them? Because people seem to have forgotten them or taken them for granted. But what I'm going to tell you now, as Gordon says, it is almost like platitude. Any educator with a pulse, hearing what I'm about to say, will nod his or her head and say, sure. But the trick is to actually go from saying, yeah, that's a great idea, to actually making it happen. So in Union City, you start with an amazing preschool system. And I know Susie Rojas is here someplace or other in the audience. Susie Rojas is sort of, where are you, Susie? I spent a fair amount of time in Susie's class, preschool class at Hostas. I walked in there and I thought, God, why am I not 3 years old? This is so cool. I mean, anything that any kid of whatever age might want to do is going on there. And I watched a lesson. Last time I was there, I watched a lesson about the making of latkes. And for those of you for whom latkes is not a familiar word, they're potato pancakes. And it's a Hanukkah tradition, a Jewish Hanukkah tradition. And the kids had read a great story about an old lady who, was making latkes. It's a great story to prep themselves for this. But the lesson was these kids, these 3- and 4-year-olds, are actually going to make latkes. That, by the way, meant cooking on a real honest-to-God stove. But every aspect of that lesson, from the picking up of the potato to smelling the potato, did they like it? The onion, what did it smell like? What did it feel like? Would it change when you cooked it? This is a big spoon. What do they call this? It's a tablespoon. That's it. That little spoon is a teaspoon. You learn everybody had a hand chopping the vegetables, chopping the potatoes, chopping the onions. The P sound in pimento is the same as the P sound in pepper. And all the way on. What do you think is going to happen when we put this in a food processor? Let's find out. Teachers, and I spend most of my time teaching, dream about teachable moments. Every second of that lesson is a teachable moment. And I came back, I went roaming around and visiting other classrooms. And Susie said, the latkes are ready, do you want to try some? And I said, sure, It's middle of the morning, I was hungry. And I took a plate and I grabbed a latke, and there were the latkes, and sour cream and applesauce, which are the traditional things that you serve with latkes. And this is a Latino community, so what do you think was also being served with the latkes? Salsa. And let me tell you, salsa actually improves latkes. I'm giving up on applesauce, and I'm substituting salsa. So throughout this conversation, I'd like to intersperse stories like that. And I think that at a time when people are focused on systems, they're focused on politics, they're focused on what I think of as adult games, they're power play games. I don't know if you know this, but in Los Angeles recently, there was a hotly contested school board election. Thank goodness, by the way, you don't have school board elections here, so you don't have to go through that nightmare. $4 million was spent to defeat one candidate whose sin was that he questioned the endless growth of charter schools and wondered if teachers should be entirely evaluated on the basis of students' test scores. So in a world in which that kind of adult game playing, where the kids get forgotten, is what the conversation looks like, where people talk about the market as a model as though selling education is like, selling iPads.